I inherited $43 million from my grandmother, the estate, the properties, everything. But 3 months later, a court-ordered DNA test revealed the truth. I wasn't related to her at all. And when I discovered who I really was and why I'd been placed in that family 30 years ago, everything I thought I know about my life was a lie. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. My name is Victoria Hayes, or at least that's the name I've used my entire life. But 3 months ago, I found out that might not be my real name, that I might not be who I think I am, that my entire existence might be built on a lie. Let me start from the beginning. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. Old money, generational wealth, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and your last name matters more than anything else. My grandmother, Catherine Hayes, was the matriarch of our family, 87 years old when she died, sharp as a tack until the very end, elegant, powerful, the kind of woman who could silence a room just by walking into it. She lived in this massive estate in Greenwich, 12 bedrooms, tennis courts, indoor pool, acres of manicured gardens. The house had been in the Hayes family for 4 generations. I loved her more than anyone in the world. My parents died in a car accident when I was 3. I don't remember them. All I remember is Catherine. She raised me. Just me. No siblings. My father had been her only child. "You're all I have left, Victoria," she'd tell me. "You're my entire world." And I felt the same about her. Growing up, it was just us in that big house. Well, us and the staff. Housekeepers, groundskeepers, a driver, a cook. But emotionally, it was just us. Catherine taught me everything. How to carry myself, how to speak, how to navigate the world of old money and older traditions. "The Hayes name means something," she'd say. Never forget that. I never did. Catherine's late husband, my grandfather, William Hayes, had 2 siblings who had their own children. So I had an extended family, cousins, second cousins, great aunts and great uncles. But we weren't close. Catherine had complicated relationships with them. Her brother-in-law, Gerald Hayes, and his wife, Patricia, lived in Boston. They had 2 children, my cousins, Harrison and Sloan. Harrison was 45, a corporate lawyer. Sloan was 42, married to a hedge fund manager. Both of them had always looked at me like I didn't belong. "You're not really Hayes," Sloan said to me once at a family Christmas when I was 16. "Your father was adopted." I ran to Catherine crying. She held me and said, "Don't listen to her. You are a Hayes. You have Hayes blood. That's all that matters." I believed her. I had no reason not to. Catherine died 6 months ago, peacefully in her sleep. The doctor said her heart just stopped. No pain, no suffering, just gone. I was 33 years old and I'd lost the only parent I'd ever known. The funeral was massive. Hundreds of people. Politicians, business leaders, old money families from across the East Coast. Everyone wanted to pay their respects to Catherine Hayes. I stood at the front of the church in my black dress, numb, unable to cry because the grief was too big to process. Harrison and Sloan were there, of course. Gerald and Patricia. Other distant relatives I barely knew. They all hugged me and said the right things. But I saw the way they looked at each other, like they were waiting for something. 2 weeks after the funeral, Catherine's lawyer, Theodore Blackwell, called a family meeting to read the will. We gathered in the library of Catherine's estate. My estate now, I supposed, though it still felt like hers. Theodore was 70 years old, had been Catherine's lawyer for 40 years. He'd known me my entire life. He cleared his throat and began reading. Most of it was standard. Small bequests to staff members who'd worked for Catherine for decades. Donations to charities she'd supported. And then he got to the main clause. "To my beloved granddaughter Victoria Hayes, I leave the entirety of my estate. This includes the Greenwich property and all associated land, the property in the Hamptons, the apartment in Manhattan, all financial assets, stocks, bonds, and personal belongings. I trust Victoria to honor the Hayes legacy and use these resources wisely." Silence. Complete silence. I couldn't breathe. Everything? She left me everything? Theodore continued. The estimated value of the estate is approximately $43 million. I heard someone gasp. I looked around the room. Harrison's face was red. Sloane looked like she was going to be sick. Gerald and Patricia were staring at Theodore like he'd spoken a different language. "This is ridiculous," Harrison said, standing up. "Catherine can't have been in her right mind." Mrs. Hayes was evaluated by 2 independent physicians in the months before her death. Theodore interrupted calmly. "She was found to be of sound mind and body. This will is legal and binding." "She left everything to Victoria?" Sloane's voice was shrill. "Everything? We get nothing?" "You received the bequests specified in the will," Theodore said. $25,000 each. $25,000? Harrison laughed bitterly. "Catherine was worth $43 million, and she left us $25,000? Theodore closed the folder. "Those were Mrs. Hayes's wishes. If you wish to contest the will, that is your right. But I assure you, it will be unsuccessful." They left, all of them, walking out without saying goodbye. I sat there in the library, alone, trying to process what had just happened. I'd just inherited $43 million and made enemies of my entire family. The first month was surreal. I went from being comfortable, I'd always had money, but not that kind of money, to being genuinely wealthy. The estate was mine, the properties, the investments. I hired a financial advisor, set up trusts, made sure everything was managed properly. I quit my job. I'd been working at an art gallery in Manhattan more for something to do than because I needed the money. And focused on, I don't know, figuring out my new life. I threw a small dinner party at the estate. Just friends, people I'd known for years. "This is insane." "Vic," my best friend Lauren said, looking around. "You're living in a literal mansion." "I know, it doesn't feel real." "What are you going to do with all this money?" "I don't know. Catherine wanted me to honor the family legacy, whatever that means." "It means you can do whatever you want. You're set for life." I should have been happy, but something felt wrong. Not the inheritance itself, but the way my family had looked at me during the will reading, like I'd stolen something that belonged to them. 6 weeks after Catherine's death, I received a legal notice. Harrison and Sloane were contesting the will. They claimed Catherine had been unduly influenced, that I had manipulated her into leaving everything to me. "This is absurd," Theodore told me over the phone. "They have no case. Catherine was evaluated. She was competent. You didn't manipulate her." "Then why are they doing this?" "Money. They expected to inherit and they didn't. This is a last-ditch effort to overturn the will." "Will it work?" "No, but it will be unpleasant. They're going to make accusations. Dig into your relationship with Catherine. Try to paint you as opportunistic." "I loved her." "I know you did, but in court, love doesn't matter. Only evidence matters." The lawsuit moved forward. Depositions, discovery, legal motions. Harrison's lawyers tried everything. They claimed I'd isolated Catherine from the rest of the family, that I'd prevented them from visiting her, that I'd coerced her into changing her will. All lies. But they were loud lies, public lies. The story made the local news. Hayes family fortune in dispute. I hated it. Hated the attention. Hated the accusations. "Just settle with them," Lauren advised. "Give them some money. Make this go away." "No, Catherine wanted me to have this. I'm not giving them anything." "Then you're in for a fight." She was right. 3 months into the lawsuit, Harrison's lawyers filed a motion that changed everything. They requested a court-ordered DNA test. "What?" I said to Theodore. "Why?" He looked uncomfortable. "They're questioning your lineage." "My lineage? I'm Catherine's granddaughter. My father was her son." "Yes, but your father was adopted, and Harrison's team is claiming that without blood relation, you have less claim to the Hayes estate." "That's insane. Catherine knew my father was adopted. She raised me. She left everything to me anyway." "I know, but the court has granted their motion." "You need to submit to a DNA test." "Fine, whatever. Let's just get this over with." I gave my DNA sample 2 days later. Standard procedure, cheek swab, lab analysis, results in 2 weeks. I wasn't worried. Of course I was related to Catherine. My father was her son, adopted or not. That made me her granddaughter, right? Theodore called me on a Wednesday afternoon. Victoria, we need to meet in person, today. His tone scared me. What's wrong? Just come to my office, please. I drove to his office in Greenwich. My hands were shaking the entire way. Theodore's secretary showed me in immediately. He was sitting at his desk, looking 10 years older than he had 2 weeks ago. Sit down, he said gently. I sat. The DNA results came back. And? He handed me a folder. You're not biologically related to Catherine Hayes? The room tilted. What? The test compared your DNA to Catherine's. Samples taken from her medical records. There's no genetic match. You're not her biological granddaughter. That's impossible. Your father was not Catherine's biological son. But he was adopted. No, Victoria, he wasn't. I stared at him. I don't understand. Theodore took a deep breath. According to these results, the man you knew as your father, the man Catherine raised as her son, was not adopted through any legal process. There's no adoption record, no legal documentation, nothing. Then who was he? I don't know, but Catherine lied about who he was, about where he came from, about everything. I couldn't process it. I sat in Theodore's office for over an hour, just staring at the DNA report. No biological relation. My father wasn't Catherine's son. Which meant I wasn't her granddaughter. Which meant, what? Who was I? What happens now? I finally asked. Legally, the will contest becomes much more complicated. If you're not a blood relative, Harrison and Sloan have a stronger case for inheritance. But Catherine wanted me to have it. She said so in the will. She did, but Harrison's lawyers will argue that she was operating under a false belief, that she thought you were her granddaughter when you weren't. She knew my father was adopted. She told me that herself. Did she? Theodore looked at me carefully. Or is that what she told everyone to explain why he looked nothing like her? Why were there no baby photos? Why did no one remember her being pregnant? Oh my God. She lied, I whispered. My entire life she lied. It appears so. But why? Why would she raise a child who wasn't hers? Why would she pretend he was her son? I don't know. But Victoria, you need to find out. Because if Harrison's team discovers the truth before you do, they'll use it against you. I hired a private investigator that same day. His name was Frank Chen, former FBI, specialized in genealogy and family history. I need to know who I am, I told him. Who my father really was, where he came from. Why did Catherine raise him? Do you have any information to start with? Birth certificate, baby photos, medical records? Nothing. My father died when I was 3. I don't remember him. Catherine never talked about his childhood. I assumed it was too painful for her. What was your father's name? James Hayes, born in 1957, supposedly. Died in 1992. Frank nodded. I'll start there. Birth records, hospital records, school enrollment. If Catherine was lying about who he was, there will be gaps, inconsistencies. How long will this take? Could be days, could be months, depends on what I find. Find it fast, please. He did. Frank called me 5 days later. I found something. What? Your father, James Hayes. There's no birth certificate on file in Connecticut or anywhere in the United States. What do you mean? I mean, he doesn't exist, not officially. Not until he shows up in school enrollment records at age 6 in 1963. How is that possible? Someone created an identity for him. Someone gave him that name, that birth date, and enrolled him in school as Catherine's son. But there's no record of his birth, no hospital, no doctor, no certificate. So he just appeared? Essentially, yes. I felt sick. Where did he come from? That's what we need to figure out. But, Victoria, there's something else. What? I ran your DNA through a genealogy database. You know, those ancestry sites where people upload their genetic information. Okay. You have a match, a close match, a woman named Helen Parker. Based on the genetic markers, she's your biological grandmother. My heart stopped. My grandmother, not Catherine? Yes, and Helen Parker is alive. She lives in a small town in Vermont. I have her address. I drove to Vermont the next day. The address Frank gave me was a small house on a quiet street in a town I'd never heard of. Nothing like the estate I'd grown up in. Just normal, middle class, simple. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to gather the courage to knock on the door. Finally, I did. An older woman answered. Late 70s, gray hair, kind eyes. Can I help you? She asked. Are you Helen Parker? Yes. My name is Victoria Hayes. I think you might be my grandmother. Her face went white. Oh my God. Can I come in? She let me inside. We sat in her small living room. How did you find me? She asked, her hands shaking. DNA test. I'm trying to figure out who I am, who my father was. A woman named Catherine Hayes raised him, but he wasn't her biological son. And I'm trying to understand why. Helen closed her eyes. Catherine Hayes. You know her? I know of her. I've never met her. But I know what she did. What did she do? Helen looked at me with tears in her eyes. She took my daughter. Your daughter? I whispered. Yes, 34 years ago. Her name was Sarah. She was 19 years old. She got pregnant by a boy she'd been dating. He left when he found out. Sarah was scared, alone, didn't know what to do. Helen wiped her eyes. I wanted to help her. I wanted her to keep the baby. But we didn't have money. I was a single mother myself, working 2 jobs. Sarah was in college on scholarship. A baby would have ended all of that. So what happened? A woman approached us. She said her name was Catherine Hayes. She said she was wealthy, connected, and could provide opportunities. She offered to adopt the baby, and give you a life we never could. She bought me? No, not exactly. It was a legal adoption. Papers were signed, money changed hands, yes, but it was all legitimate. Sarah agreed to it. I agreed to it. We thought we were doing the right thing. Then why did Catherine lie? Why did she pretend I was her biological granddaughter? Helen's face darkened. Because Catherine didn't adopt you. She adopted your mother. I stared at her. What? Catherine didn't want a baby. She wanted a child she could raise as her own son. She wanted an heir, a son to carry on the Hayes name. So she took Sarah and she made her disappear. I don't understand, I said. Helen's voice was shaking. Catherine Hayes couldn't have children. Her husband William desperately wanted an heir, but she was infertile. Back in the 1950s, that was shameful, devastating for a woman in her position. So she adopted me? No. She pretended to be pregnant. She and William went to Europe for 8 months. When they came back, they had a baby, a son, James. But where did James come from? They bought him from a private adoption agency that didn't ask questions. They paid a fortune for a baby boy with the right look, the right background, and they raised him as their biological son. And no one questioned it? This was 1957. People didn't question wealthy families. If Catherine Hayes said she gave birth to a son, people believed her. I felt like I was going to throw up. And my mother, Sarah? Helen's eyes filled with tears again. When Sarah got pregnant with you in 1989, she met with adoption agencies. Catherine Hayes was working with one of them, looking for another child. But this time, she didn't want a baby. She wanted a grandchild. James was 32 years old and unmarried. She was getting older and wanted to ensure the Hayes legacy continued. So she adopted my mother and pretended she was James's wife? Yes, she paid Sarah, paid us, a lot of money. Enough to change our lives. Sarah would give birth, then disappear. Catherine would claim the baby as James's child, and you'd be raised as Hayes. Where's my mother now? I asked, my voice breaking. Where's Sarah? Helen looked away. She died 2 years after you were born. Car accident, just like Catherine told everyone James died. What? There was no car accident that killed James and his wife. That was a lie. The truth is, James was never married, and your mother died in Vermont, alone, with no one knowing she was the woman who'd given you up. I sat there, trying to process everything. My entire life was a fabrication. James wasn't Catherine's biological son. He was an adopted child she'd pretended to birth. I wasn't James's biological daughter. I was the child of a woman who'd been paid to disappear. Catherine had orchestrated everything, built an entire fake family tree, created a legacy based on lies. Why? I asked Helen. Why go through all of this? Because Catherine Hayes cared about one thing above all else, the Hayes name, the Hayes legacy. She couldn't have biological children, so she created them. She bought them. She lied about them. Because admitting the truth, that she was infertile, that her son was adopted, that her granddaughter came from a poor Vermont family, would have destroyed the image she'd spent her entire life building. She lied to me my entire life. She did. I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you that she loved you, that she cared about you as a person. But the truth is, you were a tool, a way to continue the Hayes legacy. I thought about all the years Catherine had raised me, the lessons, the etiquette, the constant reminders that I was a Hayes and that meant something. She'd been training me, molding me, creating the perfect heir, and I'd never questioned it because I'd loved her. What am I supposed to do now? I whispered. Helen reached over and took my hand. You tell the truth. You stop living her lie. You become who you really are. Who am I? You're Sarah's daughter. You're my granddaughter. Your real name is Victoria Parker. And you deserve to know where you really came from. I drove back to Connecticut in a daze. Everything I thought I knew was wrong. My name, my family, my identity. Catherine Hayes had been a fraud, and she'd made me a fraud too. When I got back to the estate that wasn't even really mine, Theodore was waiting. The court hearing is tomorrow, he said. Harrison's lawyers are going to present the DNA evidence. They're going to argue that you have no legal claim to the inheritance. They're right, I said quietly. What? I'm not Hayes. I never was. Catherine lied about everything. She bought it for my mother. She created a fake family history. And I'm the last piece of that lie. Theodore stared at me. Victoria, my real name is Victoria Parker. I'm the biological granddaughter of a woman named Helen Parker in Vermont. Catherine adopted my mother illegally and pretended she was her daughter-in-law. Then she raised me as her granddaughter to continue a legacy that never existed. Do you have proof of this? Yes. Helen has documents, adoption papers, payment records, everything. Theodore sat down heavily. This changes everything. I know. If this comes out in court, it's going to come out, because I'm going to tell them. Victoria, if you do that, you'll lose the inheritance. Harrison and Sloan will get everything. Good, it was never mine to begin with. The hearing was held in a Connecticut courtroom the next day. Harrison and Sloan were there with their lawyers. Theodore represented me. The judge reviewed the DNA evidence, confirmed that I was not biologically related to Catherine Hayes. Harrison's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, this proves that Ms. Hayes, or whatever her real name is, has no legitimate claim to Catherine Hayes' estate. She is not a blood relative. The will should be overturned and the estate should pass to the rightful heirs. Gerald Hayes' children, Harrison and Sloan. The judge looked at me. Ms. Hayes, do you have a response? I stood up. Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to tell the court the truth about who I am and where I came from. And I did. I told them everything. About Sarah. About the illegal adoption. About Catherine's infertility and her desperate need to create an heir. About the lies that had built the Hayes legacy. I presented Helen's documents, the adoption papers, the payment records. The courtroom was silent when I finished. The judge looked at Harrison and Sloan. Did you know about any of this? No, Harrison said, his face pale. We had no idea. Your Honor, I said. I'm not asking to keep the inheritance. I'm not Hayes. I never was. But before this estate passes to anyone, I think the court should know what kind of family they're inheriting from. The judge nodded slowly. I'll take this under advisement. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. The story broke nationally. Hayes family legacy built on lies. Heiress discovers she was bought as a baby. $43 million estate in question after DNA bombshell. I didn't read most of the articles, didn't watch the news. I stayed at a hotel, couldn't stay at the estate anymore, and waited for the judge's decision. Helen called me every day. Are you okay? I don't know. You did the right thing, telling the truth. Did I? I just destroyed the only family I ever knew. That family was built on lies, sweetheart. You set yourself free. Maybe. Or maybe I just destroyed my entire life for nothing. The judge's ruling. 2 weeks later, the judge issued his ruling. The will was overturned. I was not a legal heir to Catherine Hayes. The estate would pass to Harrison and Sloan as the closest blood relatives. I would receive nothing. Well, not nothing. The judge awarded me $500,000 as compensation for the unusual circumstances and emotional distress. $500,000, enough to start over, to build a new life. But not $43 million. Harrison and Sloan got the rest. The properties, the investments, everything. I should have been devastated, but I wasn't. I felt free. I moved to Vermont, bought a small house near Helen. Nothing fancy, just a normal house in a normal town. I changed my name legally, Victoria Parker, my real name. I started volunteering at a local community center. I took art classes, made actual friends who didn't care about money or legacy or family names. Helen and I had dinner twice a week. She told me stories about my mother, about Sarah, what she was like, what she dreamed of, who she was before Catherine took her away. She would be proud of you, Helen said, for telling the truth, for choosing honesty over money. I miss her, I said, even though I never knew her. I know, me too. We sat in comfortable silence. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Not because of my last name, not because of money, but because I was with my family, real family. People ask me if I regret it. Giving up $43 million, walking away from the Hayes legacy, and my answer is always the same. No, not for a second. Because that money was never mine, that legacy was never mine, that life was never mine. It was Catherine's lie, and I refused to keep living it. I'm Victoria Parker, granddaughter of Helen Parker, daughter of Sarah Parker. That's who I am. And that's enough. 6 months after the court ruling, I received a package from Theodore. Inside was a letter, addressed to me, in Catherine's handwriting. It was dated 3 months before she died. I opened it with shaking hands. My dear Victoria, if you're reading this, then you know the truth. About James, about Sarah, about you. I suppose you hate me now, and I don't blame you. But I want you to know something. I did love you, in my own way. You were the closest thing to a real grandchild I ever had. I know what I did was wrong. Creating a legacy based on lies, buying children, pretending they were my blood. But I was desperate. Desperate to matter. Desperate to leave something behind. Desperate to prove that I was worth something even though I couldn't give my husband the one thing he wanted most. A child. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't forgive myself. But I want you to know, you deserved better than the life I gave you. Better than the lies. Better than being a pawn in my desperate need for relevance. I hope someday you find your real family, your real name, your real self. And I hope you're happier than I ever was. With love and regret, Catherine, I cried when I read it. Not because I forgave her, but because I understood her. She was broken, desperate, willing to do terrible things to fill a void inside herself, and she dragged me into that brokenness. But I'd found my way out. And that was enough. It's been a year since Catherine died, a year since I found out I wasn't who I thought I was. I'm 34 now, living in Vermont, working as a freelance graphic designer, dating a teacher named Ben who has no idea who the Hayes family is and doesn't care. Helen is healthy, happy. We have family dinners every Sunday. I'm learning who I am, who Victoria Parker is. And honestly, I like her better than Victoria Hayes ever was. If you're living someone else's lie, if your life is built on secrets and manipulation and false identities, I want you to know, you can walk away. It won't be easy. It won't be comfortable. You might lose everything, but you'll gain something more important. Yourself. Your real self. Not the version someone else created, not the identity someone else imposed on you, but the real, authentic you. And that's worth more than $43 million. That's worth everything. This is Laura Stories. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Comment below where you're watching from. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? Let me know. You are stronger than you think, and you deserve to live your truth. I'll see you in the next video.